Hello, what is up, what is good? It is time to talk about the anime I watched in summer 2025. Now, we do not live in Australia, so some of the more meteorologically inclined of you may be going, summer, but it's frickin' cold outside. What are you talking about, summer? What about winter 2025? And if by that you mean January through March 2025, well, I didn't watch any anime. And I also didn't watch any anime in spring 2025 for reasons I think I went over in some video, but whatever. Didn't happen. Started watching anime again in summer 2025, was watching it just kind of on my own pace, off and on, trying to get at least an episode a day in. And I only finished watching everything and making the slides for it quite recently. Now, there is also fall 2025, where I've been watching things with my anime club once again. Actually ended up watching quite a lot of really good shows. So that video is also forthcoming, but we gotta catch up first. This is absurdly overdue, but I'm sure you would agree this is a phenomenal series, or season full of phenomenal series. So I think it's worth talking about still. First, of course, we will talk about the stuff that I didn't watch. Gachi Akuta, I've heard a lot of high praise for, both in terms of the original manga and this production, that it's really kind of experimental and full of awesome action sakuga. Kind of like to check it out at some point. I like to read the manga at least. It seems to be one of the hotter kind of battle shonen manga these days. The Fragrant Flower Blooms with Dignity is a rom-com I've heard endless praise for the manga, and it's a Cloverworks adaptation, so I'm sure they did a good job, but unfortunately didn't get to it. The Summer Hikaru Died, I watched the first episode of. I was actually pretty impressed with like the setting and the premise and stuff. It had a really nice, haunting, strange vibe. I'd like to read the manga. I don't know if I'd go back to the anime. The production didn't seem like super mind-blowing. But yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about the manga too. Futari Solo Camp, as a big fan of Yuru Camp. I'm always down for more camping anime. I heard this was a pretty good adaptation. Again, I may end up just reading the manga, but we'll see. See You Tomorrow at the Food Court, I thought had a really wonderful premise, and I heard some good things about it as it was airing. Just your very standard kind of 1v1 slice of life, where they just meet every day in the food court and have a chat. God, what a great life that must be. This I also heard was a very fun slice of life rom-com, all centered around arcades. Turkey got a lot of attention. It starts off looking like cute girls doing cute things bowling anime, their bowling club, but then suddenly transitions into isekai bowling, which is kind of mind-blowing and bizarre, and it's unclear why they did this or why they formatted it like this, with a total fake out in all of the promotional materials and trailers and stuff, until you actually watch the first episode, which I did. I think that kind of rug pull is pretty funny, but it wasn't enough for me to watch it. Karaoke Iko is a BL kind of appearing series about I think he's like a Yakuza guy who gets somebody to coach him in karaoke. That's very fun. Great premise, just didn't get to it. And then the remake of Samurai Den Yaiba, sorry, I heard was very good. I heard it had excellent production, so just a crazy stacked series. I just realized that Zenshu should be on this list too, as something I was interested in but didn't watch. I watched the first episode of it. I was very impressed. And you may see all this and be like, oh, so then, like, what did you watch? Well, actually, still quite a few things. I think we have 6 shows to talk about, so let's plunge into it. Oh, and Anne Shirley, a new Anne of Green Gables anime that I heard was really, really lovely. And as a good Canadian citizen, I felt like I ought to watch it, but I didn't get to it. All right, but let's start with Takopi's Original Sin, which had a 6-episode run right around the start of the summer, and really just shook off all those lovely beginning of summer, hey, the weather's finally nice, good feelings. This is probably one of the most acclaimed manga that I haven't actually read any part of. just in terms of general kind of following in the West. I had always seen it praised really, really highly. Just hadn't gone to yet. And it had this sort of intimidating aura. I knew a little bit about the subject matter, which had a lot of darkness. And then just this strange, sketchy art style where all the characters have like super skinny limbs and their faces look so weary and sleep deprived. And it reminds me of like certain types of doujinshi that I'd really rather forget and not talk about. And then I had read the start of the Ichinose family, which is the same mangaka, but I dropped it rather quickly. Like it didn't really resonate with me. I think I'd like to reinvestigate it, but at the time I just like it didn't quite click with me. It didn't really feel like it had the hallmarks of what I look for in manga. It felt, I don't know, just like not up to par in terms of what I want to spend my time reading. Like it wasn't that I was like, this looks horrible, but like I was just like, I'm not vibing with this. And yeah, like eventually I should re-examine it, because now I'm like all about Weekly Shonen Jump and I want to read everything in Weekly Shonen Jump and understand the magazine better and better. But at the time it just had this like very off-putting weird vibe to it. And it feels like I then had no trust in this author, because they didn't deliver what I thought was like a typical Jump manga, what I kind of expected from a Jump manga. And therefore it had like an element of dangerousness, that there wasn't any like vetting that had happened by them being a mangaka in Jump that I like read and understood. Instead, I just had this like lack of trust that this manga could be anything, that it could have like really actually heinous things in it with like very little sympathy for me as a reader, if that makes sense. And yeah, pretty much all of those fears were justified. This is indeed a truly upsetting series full of shocking despair, anti-epiphanies, that is, characters coming to some sort of epiphany, some revelation, some understanding, but they turn out to be false and misleading. Just brutal realizations of how bad things truly are. It's a very clever premise. You know, it's basically just like Doraemon, except that Nobita is in the pit. Immediately ripe with all sorts of potential, as Takopi, you know, being this aloof, strange, cute alien, has no idea Earth culture or interpersonal dynamics or whatever, and just wants to be kind of helpful, and but instead just makes things worse and worse and worse. It becomes very frustrating, his misunderstandings, his stupidity, his naivety, and the plot often moves forward in those moments where he just acts out of total ignorance and make things 1,000 times worse. It's just a super compelling way, I think, to advance the plot. You're just kind of like waiting for how his next misunderstandings are gonna like screw up the next situation that's sort of just teetering on the edge. And there's this unflinching, relentless decisiveness to it, where they introduce a plot point and you imagine, ooh, that could come back to bite them eventually. But no, there's no break. There's no feeling of, okay, well, maybe it will go well. Pretty much every bad thing you can imagine happens in like the most maximally bad way right away. And what shocked me even more than just this existing, this being the plot of the manga and stuff, was just how good the adaptation was. It blew me away, just this super vivid flowing sakuga, brilliant interjections into different modes of art design and aesthetics, you know, always breaking into the imagination space, having the emotions of the characters flowing out to influence the way everything is imagined. And every time that Takopi does anything, just the way they depict that type of like alien magic of these gadgets and stuff in the Doraemon style, it's one of the best depictions I've ever seen. Just kind of having that really bouncy cuteness and just the Yurukera vibes of it all, going so far in kind of like developing that, but not for like a children's show where these elements are typically located, but instead in this like really miserable, very adult show. I think shows a lot of boldness, and again, just this kind of shocking who is this for quality. Okay, so what makes like Takopi so strange? I think it's because it's been getting a lot of critical acclaim. I think it's like one of the highest rated series on my anime list now. And it falls into like an genre of 10 out of 10 I cried. Okay? And this is kind of a meme, you know, you always see these series that are real tearjerkers in whatever way. They get rave reviews across the board, some of the most highly rated stuff in terms of viewer scores. And a comment, a refrain that, in my mind at least, is very funny and mimetic, is like 10 out of 10, I cried. But I think lumping all of these together actually does them a disservice. There's actually like 3 distinct subgenres within 10 out of 10, I cried. And I think talking about Takopi is a good excuse to break these things down. We're going to start with sadcore, hopecore, and then finally despaircore. Sadcore, some examples in anime. Clannad After Story, I think, is probably the canonical one. Definitely a 10 out of 10 I cried show. I tried to kind of cross mediums here to maybe try to illustrate it better for, I don't know, people that haven't watched Clannad, I guess, or something that might be a little more accessible just to try to really get the vibe of what I'm talking about. But the Antlers album Hospice falls into this, and I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Kieslowski, who directed the Three Colors trilogy. Three Colors Blue, I think, is very much sadcore. Hopecore, exemplified by Sangatsu no Lion, my favorite anime of all time. Don't treat this as like some sort of holier than thou judgment. I am also a big fan of the 10 out of 10 I cried genre. But Drive My Car, one of my favorite movies as well, and the Kendrick Lamar album Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. And then finally in despaircore, I think we can point to the movie The Turin Horse by Bellatar, who actually just recently passed, R.I.P., or something like the Harsh Noise Project, Hanatarashi, as something that exemplifies very well despaircore. But I think in terms of despaircore anime, I really did not have a good example until Takopi. I think this is quite innovative in being the first like truly despaircore anime, at least at this level of production, at this level of mainstream attention, for sure. So like, what the hell am I talking about here? How can we distinguish these genres? I mean, the name is kind of evocative, I hope, but I think there's a more detailed, kind of nitty-gritty way to differentiate these things. And basically, it's if we chart happiness versus time, and this isn't for the entire length of the series, but just kind of like the general pattern of the series, and more importantly, what is happening in the moments that really bring on the tears. For sadcore, if we start at like a baseline of things are relatively good, the crying moment is when things get worse. So, you know, in like Clannad After Story, when characters die. Often it's around death and loss and, you know, the disruption to kind of something that felt idyllic, of love, of companionship, of domestic bliss. In Hopecore, you know, there's obviously all sorts of fluctuations that lead up to this moment off the chart. But take Sangatsu no Lion, for example, you know, very sad things happened before the start of the series that we learn about in flashbacks and stuff. And the crying moment, the moment where it really hits you and you give it the 10 out of 10 I cried, for me at least, and I think for a lot of viewers of Sangatsu no Line, for example, it isn't when things get bad. It's when the hope starts to shine through. When you have that really cathartic, beautiful moment of revelation, of epiphany, of closeness. Like in the famous arc around Hina being bullied at school, when she realizes that what she's doing is actually important, and that by doing this, she's sort of reaching out to Rei in the past, in the famous ladybug bush moment, which to me is like the real tearjerker. Like that's the moment where I'm just like weeping watching it. And then for Despair Core, we start low and we just get lower and lower and lower. And it's not really about a change of state. Things kind of just continually get worse, but it's not like they were necessarily ever good to begin with. And where both of these kind of represent, just moments within many larger oscillations. For Despair Core, it's just sort of continuous, and you can just kind of cry like wherever you want, maybe for the whole time. and that to me is something that is pretty unique with Takopi compared to a lot of these other kind of like 10 out of 10 I cried type anime. It's just never good for her. It never was good. And spoiler alert, it might not be that good either. Although I will say, and here let's just talk about the ending directly. So this is definitely big spoilers if you plan on watching this, which I don't know if I'd recommend or not. It depends on what kind of mental health condition you're in. Feel free to skip ahead to the next show. But the way this show ends is kind of a lot more hope core than despair core, and it really does make a lot of things more clear to me. The fact that it ran in Jump Plus, that it has such a loyal cult following, that it got such a very high budget, well produced anime adaptation, is that it does have, in a sense, a little bit of a happy ending. I think if it was like truly full send despair core, I don't think it was going to be able to build this sort of legacy, this sort of fan base. And, like, would I have actually wanted that? Like, I think it would have been interesting for it to just be totally full send, hopeless and bleak. But is that actually admirable? Like, does that actually move me? Am I actually impressed with that? Or is it just like, wow, they really went for it? Because I think what really makes kind of despair core work for me is it's sort of resonating with like my own feeling of like mental illness, my own hopelessness, my own despair. And these days I'm doing like way better. I'm nowhere near as unhappy and miserable and hopeless as I was all the way up until when I like moved to Toronto and got into a relationship and got a better job and all sorts of good things started working out for me. Nowadays I kind of like when there is some sort of off-ramp from the despair, as long as it's good. What I hate is when you've got kind of a despair core story that just kind of takes place in this very nihilistic worldview, very miserable characters, all of that, and then there's just some very unjustified, very flimsy, cheesy, saccharine ray of hope that descends down to the characters, totally unjustified. Ugh. It could ruin the whole thing. It often has ruined the whole thing for me. So here, it is like, the ending is like very Deus Ex Machina, that Takopi broke the time machine. He can't go back in time anymore. And it's only at the very end that he suggests, comes to the realization, maybe, it's unclear if he knew the whole time he could do this and he just doesn't want to. But he once again goes back in time by sacrificing like his own life or something, or by making it so that he never did anything that he did, or something around that. But it's not really clear because it's like he does still linger on in their memories or something. He kind of does some sort of like transcendental magic beyond magic that breaks all of the rules they had established in the story. They established various rules around Takopi's power and the time travel and all of that, but then they break all of the rules that they established and then break them even further, and the end result is just like invalidating the vast majority of the stuff that we've seen throughout the series, like all this train wreck of devastation, things going bad and then worse, all these twists and turns. The ending is just like, well, none of those ever happened. and I think, like, if somebody had told me that that's how it ends before I started watching it, or if I'd read like the Wikipedia synopsis or something, I don't think I would even watch it. I would just be so disappointed that that's what it all builds to, just like making all of it irrelevant. But the final change, I think, is just so simple and so poetic at this just perfect level of significance. And basically, you know, the end is that her situation hasn't really improved long term. Neither of the girls are, you know, any real, like, materially better off or anything like that. Their home lives still suck. Their families are still falling apart. But they basically decide that, like, why shouldn't we still be friends? Like, why shouldn't we personally, just the two of us, get along? Because we really understand better than anyone else how much it sucks, the situation that we're in. And I think that's, like, really, really beautiful. I think that being kind of the message to end it on is not just beautiful, but, like, very, very true. You know, if you really think about the state of affairs of the world on any sort of macro scale, we're fucked. Like, I don't think that's controversial to say anymore. We're so fucked. It's it's such a horrendous time to be alive. Like, there's so much evil coming from so many directions, and we're just so doomed. And so I think all we can really salvage, all we can really hold on to is interpersonal relationships, is friendship. And again, that sounds saccharine, that sounds cheesy, but that's the only thing that's left. and I think a story that really is like, these two characters are so fucked and the problems they're facing are so beyond anything that they can personally do, but the solace they find is in each other, is in getting along. Really, really wonderful message. In the end, we can only hang on to each other. Hang on to each other. So yeah, I'll give this a 9.5. Very, very good stuff. Fantastic production. Very clever storytelling. But there's some other series that we gotta talk about that I will rank perhaps even higher. Next, let's talk about Witch Watch. Actually, first, let's check my Discord messages really quick and make sure that they aren't urgent. La 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 la. Do 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 do. Oh. Alright. Let's talk about Witch Watch. You know, I didn't even plan on watching this originally. This was spurred on by my boyfriend. Because I was already reading the manga. I was super caught up on the manga. And I watched, I think, like one episode of this, and I wasn't really blown away by the production. It just seemed fine. So I was gonna skip, you know? Rather watch things that I haven't already read. He started watching it just kind of on a total whim. But really liked it, really liked the characters, really liked the premise. Then he also got caught up on the manga. And then despite that, you know, knowing what was going to happen and everything, we just started watching this together. And yeah, you know, yeah, I was right. The production isn't mind-blowing. It isn't, you know, super experimental or filled with insane sakuga or anything. But it is very solid. I think it really conveys the wackiness of the scenarios and the characterizations and such, you know. Very absurd comedy series. Really super catchy OPs and EDs. Nice sound effect. Nice soundtrack. Nice sound effects. nice little stings to everything too, just like scene transitions. There's a little theme that plays every time they introduce like the main spell that's going to cause all of the mischief and mishaps in the episode. I really like that. That was just lovely. Felt very classic, just like kind of early 2000s anime feel. It brought me back to the sort of anime I would watch before I had, the freedom to just watch anything and everything that was airing. Before I had such refined taste to kind of rule out things very quickly and aim only for like, the super highest tier of production and stuff. Back then, I would watch a lot of stuff that I had already read in anime because that was what was on. I would watch a lot of shows that had pretty limited budgets and makeshift production because that was what was on. That was what I knew about. That's what I had access to. And it gave me a lot of nostalgia for that sort of thing. But like anime of this quality, anime that feels like this, probably is just getting made all of the time. Surely it is. I just don't watch it typically, as I said, because I have so much freedom and so much specificity in what I'd like to watch. But all of these factors combined, knowing what was going to happen, just the general vibe of the show, that very nostalgic quality of production, it made for such a comfy experience. And sometimes it is nice to ease off on like the intense surprise of Sakuga. It can be kind of overwhelming at times. To just chill out and watch something that is full of what you would expect, where you can kind of just map out the whole episode in your brain before you've even seen it. Sometimes it's nice to already know what's going to happen. It's like rewatching a classic sitcom that never gets old to you. But with just enough stuff that you forgot, just enough stuff that kind of surprises you because you're like, oh yeah, this is when this happens, or oh, I forgot about that joke. And just enough stuff that you're looking forward to too. Like, I would think, oh yeah, this is the episode that foreshadows this other episode. Very curious to see how they do that. Oh, we're building up to, this big moment. I want to see how they animate that. And it's such a great series too. If you're curious about my opinions of the actual manga, there's a lot of manga videos you can watch to learn about that. I've been talking about it in my monthly Jump wrap-up videos ever since I finished reading it. It's so good, man. It makes me want to watch the Sket Dance anime. I think that could be a pretty good time. I'm trying to get my boyfriend on board. I think it'd be super, super comfy vibes in the same way. So we will give this an 8 out of 10. Moving right along to talk about Ruri Rocks. And this is another comfy one. Extremely high quality, slice of life, quote unquote, action. This is perhaps like the ultimate genre, I feel like this is the element within anime, the genre of anime that feels most unique, feels like it gives me something that I couldn't get from any other medium, not even manga. I really, really should always be making time to be watching at least one show like this. I think it just adds such a comfort, such a healing to my life. Made me realize that by not watching Mono, which was my most anticipated slice of life anime of the year last year, both because it's the mangaka of Yuru Camp and because a friend of mine, my animator friend, was animation director for it, which made me really, really curious and really excited to check it out, and then I just didn't because I wasn't watching any anime. It's like, man, my life could have been so much richer, so much smoother and more comfortable and happier had I been watching it that season. What a shame. I gotta go back to it. Extremely gorgeous environments in which brilliant gemstones lie in wait. This is a mineralogy anime about a young girl who falls in love with the idea of finding gemstones out in the wild, teaming up with some college students who are getting geology degrees, who take her around to places where they can do all sorts of various gem extraction and discovery techniques. With joyous character acting animation, just little bursts of expressive Sakuga, just the characters coming to life, and all sorts of Very entertaining, very fun, very like character defining ways. All of the characters just sort of emote differently and gesture differently and just kind of come alive in a very charming, unique way. But then, of course, given that this is a educational cute girls doing cute things series, which is, as I said, the ultimate genre. Whenever we need to learn about geology, whenever we need to learn about the origin of gemstones and other rocks, it segues into the imagination space where all sorts of textbook style diagrams are being brought to life and kind of guided. You're guided through them by the chibi versions of the characters that are holding little impromptu lectures. It's really wonderful, very, very cute, very fun. What impressed me a lot about the series is that it uses kind of what I describe as like the modern cute girls doing cute things, arc-based writing and structuring. For a long time, these sorts of series were really very, very episodic. They were pretty limited in like scope and setting and stuff. It really was much more about just like comedy and gags and cute little moments, and not so much about like really kind of tackling a major adventure, a major quest, a major moment in someone's life. And I think Yuru Camp is the thing that really changed that. I think Yuru Camp taught people that you can do kind of like arc-based writing within the genre of slice of life. That, you know, they go on a camping trip and it lasts multiple chapters, multiple episodes. There's you know, all of the arc feeling of introducing the setting and having a couple adventures along the way to getting there, and then the big payoff moment of cooking the meal and enjoying it together at the camp and enjoying the scenery and everything, and then, you know, kind of the falling action of returning home and reflecting on the trip and stuff. This has largely the same structure. It's all about the feeling of like a quest. And this can be any length. It can still happen within the confines of one episode or even one half episode or one manga chapter, probably in the original. But it's all about more the preparation for it, just the brief foreshadowing of it, the intent behind it, about the unwinding that happens after, reflecting on it, a change occurring that kind of sets up the next one. And it's always just kind of this pattern. It's the same with Yuru Camp of breaking out into the world, going somewhere and doing something, but then returning home as well. That the returning home is just as important, just as meaningful. And it's a great mix here, I think, of this disappointment. They don't always find things. They sometimes have to return again. The determination to keep looking. The discovery, just that moment of epiphany where they realize where they ought to look for the gemstones. And then delight. They did it. The brilliant shot of the gemstone glittering in the sun. Always good. Always Kino. Another interesting quality of this show that I was quite curious about when I picked it up is this is the studio that did Onimai and Jobless Resurrection, which are both like pervert shows for perverts that have just oodles of fan service all over the place. And I wondered, like, how the heck, why the heck, and also, what are they going to get out of this one, which is like a totally G-rated slice of life. But what the show really taught me about was the idea of ambient fan service, which I think this show exemplifies better than any other. So yeah, with studio buying, some perversion is expected, but the material is very wholesome, very tame. So instead, some of those some characters, the college students, just have that kind of body, just are very voluptuous, let's say, and it's not like they're in revealing outfits. It's not like there's a beach episode or, I mean, there is a hot springs episode, but there's no real fan service accompanying it. There's no like, oh no, I slipped and fell in the river and now my clothes are all sopping wet and clinging to me. Nothing like that. It's just that the character animation is so fluid and detailed, and so much attention is paid to just the movements of the characters moving around in a realistic way, you know, hammering out rocks and chiseling stuff, and that the fan service just kind of happens. It's just ambiently naturally there. Which it's an interesting departure from Onimai, let's say. So yeah, I will give this an 8.5 out of 10. Really, really fun show. Really good time. And I think as we get into some of the more really intensely impressive shows, it makes me appreciate all the more just kind of like what a nice balancing effect this show had on me. All right, speaking of, let's talk about the new Panty and Stocking with Garterbelt. It's back. Holy shit, it is back. It's actually real and back. After 15 years, they made a new Panty and Stocking. After one of the biggest troll endings in anime history, you know, the famous cliffhanger where Stocking kills Panty, and then the double troll of doing that and being like, you'll find out in the sequel series, and just doing absolutely nothing with the characters, with the franchise, not even pretending you're about to, for years and years and years, probably a full decade before, you know, there was even rumors of a follow-up happening. And then this series kickstarting with a stupid reversal troll, undoing the cliffhanger crazy twist in the most nonsensical, screw the audience way, that Stocking was just tricked into it for like no reason. And then, maybe the funniest troll of all, just doing the rest of the show so straightforwardly, perfectly, not screwing up anything, not phoning it in, not seeming like you lost the sauce, even a drip of it. It just makes you wonder, like, why didn't you do this 15 years ago? Why didn't you do this at any other time? There's just no explanation whatsoever. Like, if they had waited 15 years and then it was just kind of like bad, you could at least be like, oh geez, you know, their heart wasn't in it. They never wanted to do it. It just happened out of desperation or whatever. You know, a bad product has like many explanations. But when a good product just kind of like pops out after 15 years, and it's just so like more of the same in the best possible way, it's just like, okay, then why did we wait? Like, could this only have happened in 2025 and not in any year previous? But yeah, this is basically everything I could want from Panty and Stocking. We got the bread and butter, movie parodies, other silliness, just straightforward gag episodic things. You know, Mad-esque, Mad being Mad Magazine, who famously did all of these movie parody comics. Huge influence on me growing up, where you're kind of sticking to the main beats of the story and retelling it, but just riffing on it, joyfully recreating the genuine appeal of those genres and of those movies in their own style. Like, if you're gonna parody The Thing, you don't just kind of like shit on the idea of The Thing. You still make something that has that feeling of suspense and isolation and paranoia, but you do it in your own style. You put your own spin on it. Then on top of this, we have a funky durian spread of really out there parodies where the entire art style changes, and you start to wonder why they're even like parodying this in the first place, because it's not really something so contemporary or something you can easily point to as kind of being like a one-to-one parallel or something. But doing like Silver Era superhero cartoons or 90s OVAs that I'm sure in Japan kind of drift around secondhand stores without really any provenance or explanation. They're so bizarre, so fully committed to the bit. Bit doesn't even seem to be the right word anymore. They changed the art style so drastically with so little explanation. And you begin to genuinely wonder, like, what you're watching. Like, is this really still Panty and Stocking? We've just gone so far beyond at this point. And then, of course, the cinematic spice on top of everything. Just awesome, badass, epic moments and aura farming and everything. it's the best part of the show is that it's not just comedy, it's not just parody, but it's an action series with some of Trigger's best animated, most kinetic, most addictive action. And the Teddy Lloyd soundtrack back and expanded with new theme remixes. Dude, the one that kind of like hybridizes the Panty and Stocking's theme, but also Scanty and Knee Socks' theme, fusing them together. These new team ups, these new transformations, new villains, new recurring antagonists like the Boy Angels. It's just so good, man. It's just like when it hits and you're so caught up in like how cool it is that you forget at times just how like absurd and grotesque and silly it is at other times too. That's Kina. So like what is the deal with this series? What is the joke of Panty Anarchy? Is it that she is rude? It's kind of fascinating to consider, you know, after this 15 years gap, how has this comedy aged, this comedy style, or how has it not? In 2010, it was a parody of contemporary Cartoon Network cartoons. But, you know, super raunchy, super nude. Characters swore, characters fucked. There's nudity, everything. And this was already being done at the time. That wasn't like a mind-blowing thing to parody that sort of style, but R-rated. Honestly, it was probably even overdone already at that time. It certainly was not cutting edge. What was Cuddy, you know, and we really understood at the time what was being parodied. All of these classic Cartoon Network cartoons. I don't need to enumerate them. Anything you remember from your childhood probably looked like this in some capacity. What they did that was unique is elevating it, like taking the idea of like, what if we made these cartoons raunchy and turning it into something that felt really masterful, full of sakuga, genuinely hilarious, going so far over the top for all of the bits. And then just this hybridization of that aesthetic and then another very popular contemporary aesthetic, which is just kind of like the clubbed out early techno, like pre-festival IDM, but candy rave, plur, all of that stuff that wasn't like cutting edge, but instead was sort of already nostalgic at that time. And doing such a good job of it that the soundtrack actually did get played in Japanese clubs. Okay, but what else came out in 2020? Adventure Time. Gather all your friends and what have you. And this was a beginning of a brand new era of cartoons that focused way more on like continuity, lore, sincerity, relationships between the characters, arcs. And I think really that this is the dominant mode of cartoons ever since. We can look at like Steven Universe, Over the Garden Wall, the Owl House, Gravity Falls. I don't know. I don't even watch these things, but those are such famous examples. They've like permeated the public consciousness. And this extends even into kind of like adult parodies of those sorts of cartoons, or just adult versions, adult cartoons in general. Like Rick and Morty, I think, is now kind of the dominant version of a cartoon for adults. And I think that in itself was sort of a reflection of Adventure Time, insofar as that it's all about like continuity and lore and sincerity and relationships between the characters and characters going through arcs and changes, and there's like a million other series now that are downstream of Rick and Morty. Rick and Morty and I guess maybe BoJack Horseman are the two that you could really point to. So now something like Panty and Stocking, I think it actually feels like even more subversive on several levels, because it has not at all bought into this new paradigm of having like arcs and continuity and meaningful character development. So, you know, they often said, Panty and Stocking, it's not coming back. They can't make it today because of woke. They can't do it. But really, I think it's just because it's so dumb. I think that's why it felt so impossible, is that the style of cartoon that they were parodying just doesn't exist anymore. It's too elevated now. But I think it really adds to it. It feels so miraculous, not just because it was gone for 15 years and now it's suddenly back, but because there's so many layers of nostalgia. So many things that it feels like we lost the recipes for to create something this stupid, this meaningless, this episodic, this lol random XD. So yeah, here's our two new boy angels. We'll give this a 10. This is a pretty easy 10 for me. I think this is a truly one-of-a-kind series, and the second season, after 15 long years, did not disappoint me in the slightest. Okay, now let's talk about the second season of Dandadan. This is the breakout hit of last year for sure. The big crossover success that had everybody from your Sakuga enthusiasts to your literary high quality anime watchers to the normiest of normies watching it. And you know, I love Science Saru a lot. I rank them pretty highly among all anime studios. They're probably in my top 3, if not top 5. And the idea of them getting like tied up just doing one long running manga just indefinitely, like at this pace they're not even like catching up with the manga really. And they're gonna have to be at this for years and years and years, you know, years after Dandadan even ends, which it's showing no sign of doing anytime soon. That would probably kind of bug me. I think I would start to think that they have better things to do. At the same time, though, they are doing better, well, I don't even want to say better, but different things in between. Sonda, all sorts of other banger adaptations, original stories, stuff like that. So I think it's all good. I'm actually down for a yearly Dandadan season. I think that is still a good use of their time. I'm excited to watch it. Because I love this manga. I love all sorts of stuff that's in it that's still to come. I think the best arcs are still ahead of it. So yeah, I think compared to the first season, this is just equally good production. Science Saru, they're not going to screw up. I didn't like the OP as much. It's hard to top the iconic Creepy Nuts song, but I like the ED even more. I love the ED for this season, so, you know, balances out. Very good. So the major arcs we got in season 2 were the end of the Cursed House arc with Gigi, the Evil Eye Containment arc, and then the big Kaiju fight arc. I got sneeze. Oh, Jesus. So violent sneeze. Anyways, I think the Cursed House arc, that's some pretty nice stuff. But it gets a little much at the end. The ending is so multifaceted, so huge, so many different things happening. It gets a little belabored maybe. But I think it's mostly just insane and deranged that they showed the first 3 episodes of season 2, which is like part of this arc, but not the big finale climax. You know, the stuff that really brings it all together and gives you a lot of like triumph and feelings and stuff. They didn't play that part in theaters. You left on like a cliffhanger that wasn't really even meaningfully different than the start of the season, where it's like, oh, shit is fucked, everything is going wrong, everybody's in trouble. So that to me is like a totally baffling choice, and hopefully, you know, we kind of move past this. Let's just air a couple episodes of the anime in theaters. Let's try to be a little more deliberate here. Let's maybe just give the viewers like a couple more episodes, if that's all it's going to take to wrap this stuff up, you know, properly. The Evil Eye Containment arc is also very, very fun. I like when this series kind of has more of like a day-to-day life focus. Not just one gigantic incident, but seeing a situation develop as the characters go to school, as they live their lives. And here I think the parallels to Ranma in particular, but Takahashi in general, are very apparent and run very deep. Obviously, the whole like water of different temperatures splashing on him to transform thing is an obvious homage. But just kind of the way that like the fights sort of build up, all these sort of little ad hoc scattered confrontations that just sort of set the stakes for the arc. And then just having like a couple little really funny, really crazy interjections, like the exorcism scene with the Visual K band coming in, or the brief training arc where they go battle the ghosts of famous composers. Really, really excellent stuff. And then the Kaiju arc, which I think kickstarts a saga that's maybe my high point for the entire series. Really, really good stuff here. This was some of the stuff that, when I first was getting caught up on the manga, which I did after watching the first season. These were things that I started like really eagerly awaiting, seeing it adapted, and it did not disappoint. The Kaiju versus Mecha fight. I really distinctly remember reading this and being like, oh my god, we're going to get Science Saru to animate this. That's crazy. So very happy to say it did not disappoint. We'll give this a 9 for the season. This, of course, leading up into that Kaiju battle that I was just talking about. Next, let's talk about My Dress Up Darling Season 2. This is a series I only got into recently. I was not watching Season 1 as it aired. I wasn't reading the manga. Because I am a plebeian, this is one that my boyfriend got into. He read the manga after having it recommended. And very quickly it became one of his favorite rom-coms and got me on the train as well. It really did live up to the hype and then some. What a gorgeous, what a lovely, what a just wonderful, wonderful series. At once, it fits into my beloved educational slice of life genre, taking you through all things cosplaying, from the technical stitch-by-stitch level to the social dynamics of the scene, a complete anthropological and artisanal survey of the art of cosplay, with really awesome cathartic payoffs that bring tears to my eyes, when they nail the photo shoot. Those are consistently moments that make me tear up in manga and anime and stuff, is when a creative project is brought to fruition, often in kind of like a public setting like this, and it's just everything everyone could have hoped for, and like the glowing praise and reviews starts pouring in. Those are sort of moments that I watch anime just to witness. But here it's just kind of like the cherry on top, the peak of enjoyment. Because there's a lot more too. It's also just this total treatise on the phenomena of otakuism. Our main character is a massive fan of all sorts of different genres and movements, and video games and anime and light novels and manga. So it kind of takes you into those different otaku scenes one at a time. You really begin to understand the appeal more. You begin to understand the circles in which these things spread and operate. And my favorite part is they do really extensive, really loving and detailed in-universe parodies, because she's always a fan of, in-universe series that don't exist. But they bring them to life with such care and dedication. Like, it really feels like they had thought through the entirety of what this would be if it existed, and we just get to see these little slivers to inspire the cosplay. Season 2 goes even crazier on these. Some really amazing feats of animation as they recreate some of like the super retro styles, or there's a whole sequence that shows, in game, this horror cult game that they're doing a cosplay of. And it's like, man, you guys like animated big chunks of like a visual novel here, just for the sake of enhancing this one storyline. It's really amazing. And it's also a moving character study on passion, self-actualization, friendship, and ultimately love. I think it's just such an amazing character study. This idea of, a very introverted guy who has deep passions and hobbies and is so brilliant at his craft, but is shy and reclusive and fears judgment, fears that people won't understand. And then on the other hand, seeing, this mega fan, this giga otaku who is just this living life totally unashamedly, who is super popular, the center of everyone's attention, and just sort of opens up that world to him. I think it's just such a beautiful story, just putting aside any of the specifics just that type of journey, just that kind of archetypal connection, I think is so wonderful. Gojo's long journey to loving himself truly is the heart of the story, and I think it's such a kind story, all about finding those qualities in yourself that you can truly be proud of. And it is just a great rom-com. I love rom-coms. I read a lot of them. I watch a lot of them, and this one just nails it on all the levels that mean most to me. I think something that's so key about it that is way too rare is that both leads are really, truly lovable. They're both idealized in the way that you want for your rom-com protagonists, where, they're not, like, annoyingly perfect, but they are just, like, wonderful, idealized people that you'd love to get to know. It's truly one for bisexuals in a way. Like, I think they really do put a lot of effort into making both Marin and Gojo, like, equally appealing to different audiences, or the lucky few that it's the same audience. Falling for each other in moments of poetic epiphany. So cute, so compelling, and yet so mature, too. Like, I think both characters show a lot of emotional maturity. There are misunderstandings. There are, your typical flustering confusions, mishaps, and all of that. That's your rom-com staples. But underneath it all, like, they communicate. They build trust with one another. It's very nice to see something that doesn't take kind of like lazy shortcuts with that kind of character writing. All of this depicted with such masterful, joyful production, exploding in every direction at once, scenes of beauty, scenes of brilliance, scenes of cuteness, scenes of spontaneous surprise, all different art styles, shifting into the imagination space, the emotive space. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. At the end of the day, I think there is still a tier of rom-com that's even higher than this. And this is maybe a little too frictionless to really move into the top echelon for me. I think best exemplified, there's a plot line in the second series where it seems like another character really dislikes Marin, and there's genuine moments of, like, kind of tension and uncomfortableness, and a lot of mystery for the viewer of, like, what the hell is the issue here? What's her beef? It feels like it is headed for, like, a confrontation, for, some uncomfy times or something. And then they swerve it. The twist is that she actually just is such a big fan of Marin that she's avoiding her to not just kind of fangirl all over her and embarrass herself. And it's like, okay, well, that's fine. It's nice to have these as well. I wouldn't want every series to have, genuine tension and genuine uncertainty and stuff in it. This is just a lovely fantasy of connection, of success, where everything ultimately goes well. But yeah, I think something like Skip and Loafer. Skip and Loafer, they make you work for it. those characters genuinely got issues, But yeah, we'll give this a 9.5. Really, really amazing stuff. Great series. I'm eagerly awaiting a season 3. I also have all of the manga. We bought all of the manga. I kind of want to read it too. So I don't know if I'll wait, or maybe I'll read up until where season 2 ended and then wait for season 3. I don't know. Great stuff. And finally, let's talk about City, the animation. In a season full of miracles, the greatest is still hands down City. Similar to Panty Stocking, we had like a huge gap between this and Nichijou, which came out in 2011 and still ranks among my all-time favorite shows ever. It's like too good for the world. It didn't sell very well at all. And it felt like we would never, ever get more. Even though the manga kept going, I read quite a bit of the Nichijou manga. It was full of good stuff. It felt like City was, like, never gonna break through and get the same opportunity. Like, kind of why would it? Nichijou was just sort of this one-off experiment, and then why would you ever think that the new series by this mangaka would get animated? I didn't even read it, City. I don't know why. Just never got to it. I think it might have been like a subconscious thing where it would just make me sad reading it and knowing that it would never get the treatment that Nichijou got. And it just kind of felt like maybe there just would never be another thing like Nichijou. This style of gag comedy, but with like Sakuga scenes that ended up getting clipped on TikTok and YouTube Shorts, but with also just some of the funniest shtick I've ever seen, but really beautiful poetic moments too, and surreal moments, and then whatever the hell Helvetica Standard is. And it's like, could you even complain if that was it? Like, we got one. Isn't it amazing that this show exists at all? That there was one of it. Let alone, oh gosh, I wish there was more. I wish this happened every season. It's kind of like, imagine there was only one Shinbo Shaft anime. Like, we only got like one season of Hidamari or one season of SZS or something. And it was just this anomaly that a show looked like this and was produced like this and had all of this insane mixed media style and all these different experiments and how things are presented and all this stuff. And you're like, wow. It's such a shame that there isn't more of this. But I don't think you would feel unsatisfied, right? So it's kind of like, we kind of take, I think, the Shaft style for granted now, and Shinbo as a director for granted, because there was so much, and then there's so much still to come, hopefully. But like, if there was only one, I think we would force ourselves to be content and be like, yeah, that was just a strange anomaly. And I think that's kind of how we've felt about Nichijou as well. Like, yeah, that was an odd one. But no, we got it. They made more. City the Animation. It's even more Nichijou than Nichijou. Even more crazy bursts of Somu Sakuga or insane flex production style. So expressive, the characters' emotions literally exploding out in every way, in every scene. Experiments in every mode. Even ones that I never ever imagined that anime would do, or that anything would do. Things that I just like could not imagine existing. The colors, like, oh my god, the colors. I didn't think shows could look like this. Like, I just didn't think it was possible. Like, I found myself watching this in disbelief. Like, I could not believe what my eyes were seeing on like any level. Just that it existed, that it could look like this, that it could look like this and then move, like that these weren't just paintings but it actually moved around like this in such fluid, expressive, exciting Sakuga. But before we get too caught up in this hyperbole of praise, this total typhoon of praise, that'd be interesting to kind of compare it more directly with Nichijou, which is really the only other thing that has ever existed that is at all similar to this. But yeah, now I would rank this among like the all-time best produced shows ever. That sounds like hyperbole. That's quite the statement to make, but it's probably like top 5 all-time for me now. And yeah, like, I think just in terms of my favorite anime ever, this is now ranking pretty highly. But it still doesn't have the exact same sauce that Nichijou has. For some reason, it doesn't resonate quite as deep. I wasn't as moved by it. I didn't laugh until I cried as many times. Partially because, it can't hit as hard as the first time. It can't be as big a surprise. Like, the surprise here was that they made something like this again. Whereas the surprise the first time was that something like this could exist, period. And, maybe it's just because I'm at a different place in my life. Your sense of humor changes a lot. It's been 15 years. Not everything is going to be as funny to me as it was when I was younger. Maybe even if I watched Nichijou again, I wouldn't laugh as hard. Or if I did, maybe it would be more because I remembered it being so funny than it being genuinely so funny to me again. But I think there is also just a difference in the comedy writing between the two series. In a way that I found pretty interesting to kind of like try to break down that difference. So Nichijou is very, very skit-based. There's all these different kind of recurring characters and recurring gags and kind of like different parallel plot lines. but they're all very disconnected from each other, and there's no real need to set up each one. You're kind of already just like in the moment, it's just already happening. So like, you know, what in the famous camping one, why are they going camping? There's no scene where they decide to go camping. There's no scene where they go to the campground. They're just like already there. When they go to the theme park and Yuko loses her wallet, why are they at the theme park? It's just like already happening. It's just the setup for the bit. But City, on the other hand, is all about interconnectivity. I think that is the biggest distinguishing thing for why City exists at all. Why it is a new story. Why it isn't just more Nichijou. City and Nichijou, of course, are running in parallel currently. The mangaka is making both. Kind of went back and forth between them for quite a while. So it's like, why is it 2 series in the first place? This is all about the fact that there is continuity, that this is all taking place in the same, you know, titular city, that everything is affecting one another. So the plot lines thus aren't optimized just for comedy. The characters kind of have to exist above and beyond that particular skit, that particular scenario. And I think there's some tension between that, between the absurd silliness of this style of humor and this sort of like sensibility that these characters are going to continue existing after each sketch, that the actions they take will reverberate, that, you know, the premise that they've set up for these two characters to interact has to kind of be something that falls in line with future events. But the payoff, though, I think is so wonderful, which is this truly beautiful city that is alive and full of adventure, that you feel like you can just explore and find amazing, funny, bizarre things happening around every corner. I just want more of it. I think in the end, like, any kind of negative feelings I have about this when compared to Nichijou, it's partially because I'm remembering, like, the cream of the crop of Nichijou, which ran for, like, 24 episodes. So there was that much more to draw upon. Why couldn't this also be 2 core? I feel crazy saying that, because for 15 years I didn't think there would be ever anything like this ever again. And now there is. And all I can say is that I want more. That I wish there was just as much city. But maybe someday, I don't know. KyoAni has a couple projects in the pipe. Ruri Dragon adaptation, which is very exciting. What else has been announced? There's that novel that they keep planning on adapting that I think still hasn't happened, but whatever. But maybe Nichijou, or City, sorry, Season 2, or maybe Nichijou Season 2 as well. You never freaking know. There's a lot of the manga left to adapt. But maybe someday. Maybe someday. Alright. We haven't done this in a while. Actually, we just haven't made an anime review video in a while, but I think since we talked about Pretty Boy Detective Club, maybe, I haven't done this sort of like buffet of stills. But we'll do that again with City to commemorate just how beautiful and unique this is. But let me remind you, like, these are not stills that I just found in isolation where it looks really good. These are just like random ass scenes in the middle of stuff moving, of so much excitement, so much color, so much detail. This scene in particular, where every tier of the tower they're talking about the relaxation that she can, that Natsume can enjoy. There's so much detail in all of these. Or this one. Y'all know about this one? The split screen? Look at how split it gets. All of these are animated. There's stuff happening in all of them. Or the banquet scene that unfurls into. Look, I'm hanging out in the crowd too. Wow. Where the frick's Waldo at? So many good things happening here. I could just look at this for like 10 minutes and just point out stuff. And it's all like developed. It's all justified. Like, we know who like a lot of these characters are and why they're there and what they're doing. All these little Easter eggs of connection. Or the towers, Buddha building the towers. One of many instances of the art style just drastically changing. Oh man. It's the editor trying to get Mr. Happiness to get published alongside Mr. Bummer. Oh man, it's a lovely street shot. This is like the bread and butter of this series. Every shot looks like at least this good, you know. Ah, the famous indulgence. Could go for some of that. The city race. We love the city race. Oh man. The old geezer's summer vacation. The next episode gag showing endless clips of coming episodes running through like a whole completely different series on this adventure. The viral video, Mambo number 5, the Michelin star. Oh man. God. The whole last episode might be my favorite anime episode ever now. I really don't say that lightly. It just might be. It actually might be. I'd have to really think about it. You know, Sai and Hiro graduation arc. It's up there too. It's up there too. Some episodes of Monogatari series probably up there. Final episode of Madoka up there, up there. Some episodes of Nichijou, of course, up there. Definitely up there, but man. Might be this. Might be this. Just the musical. They just all start singing. Why are they singing? It's amazing. So good. Oh, it's so good. I don't know. I started recording this video and I was like, I don't know if I'm really feeling it. Just wasn't in the yapping mood today. I feel like I was stumbling over my words a lot more than normal. Pausing more than normal. Getting lost in my thoughts a little more than normal. And I don't know, it's just like, it happens. Often when that happens, I'm just like, I don't feel like recording today after all. But there's so many videos I want to make in the near future that I'm like, nah, I gotta have time to do this now. I gotta do this now. I gotta start working on the next season's anime review video. But I hope at least I got across how much I love this show. This gets a 10 easy. This anime of the year, hands down. Anime of the decade so far, hands down. Okay. My voice is getting a little raspy too, man. I hope I'm not getting sick. I think it's just really dry in here. Anyways, that's it. Great season. Really, really fantastic season. I think one of the best seasons we've had since I started making these videos. I feel so bad that I didn't watch any anime in the first 2 seasons of last year. I'm not going to make that mistake again. I thought I could do without. Can't give up on anime, man. Can't get off the treadmill. There's always more good shows to watch. So I will see you when we talk about fall 2025. Gonna talk about Sanda. Gonna talk about Ranma. Gonna talk about Noble Farmer. Oh, man. Look forward to it. Okay. Bye-bye.